Call the meeting to order at 7:03. Good evening and welcome to the June meeting of the Community Preservation Committee. Pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, Mass General Laws, Section C, 30A, Section 18, and the Governor's March 15, 2020 order imposing strict limitations on the number of people who may gather in one place. This meeting of the Community Preservation Committee is being conducted via remote participation. No in-person attendance of members of the public will be permitted, but every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings as provided for in the order. A reminder that persons who would like to listen to this meeting while in progress may do so by visiting the Zoom link found on the Community Preservation Committee's website. For tonight, we still allow questions and comments from the public. If you would like to do so, you need to identify yourself to be recognized. And Joanne will monitor the question and answer queue or room. There's Paul. We will take attendance and announce all the committee members as we go through each item. So there will be a roll call for every vote, including attendance. So she'll get started. Sandy, this is just a roll call.
Here.
Justin.
Here.
Jim.
Here.
Paul.
Here.
Brooke.
Here.
Ken. Ken is here but silenced. Is that, Kristen.
Here.
And Jen is excused absent, and that's it. And I'm here. All right, the first item of business tonight will be the Community Preservation Update Plan. Roberta Kaplan is here with us and has a few questions, hoping to get your input. Joanne and I had a discussion with her yesterday and to help direct what she's presenting tonight. And hopefully with your input, we can move forward and have the step for July ready for the next meeting. Roberta, it's all yours. And you're
muted.
Off.
Sorry about that. Thank you. And so this evening, as you could see by the document that was sent out earlier in the week, I sent a list of questions. I'd like to talk about the process with you, the application process, what you do over the course of the year, what your roles are, so that I can help to document those things and prepare a draft of your an updated application and perhaps an outline of what your timeline is throughout the year, so that you can have that be clarified for your prospective applicants and your community members. So the topics that I saw under the process, the questions about the process, and were just an overview of the process itself, how the application form works, how you communicate with the public so that you can both get good applications in the pipeline as well as keep people up to date on what's in the pipeline and what the committee is doing, so that you'll be able to get support for projects. I understand that you had a disappointing town meeting the other day, so maybe that could be instructive for helping to think about how could the process work better to provide more confidence in projects going into town meeting. And of the projects themselves, are there ways that we can ensure that the projects are ready to go forward. So I'm going to start back up at the top and just give an overview of the process. And although I talked about this with Joanne and John yesterday, I'd love to hear your input on what it, just from throughout the year, what steps do you undertake in carrying out the community preservation applications and deliberation, and how do you feel it ought to work? For example, have limit to only spring town meeting versus allowing projects to go to both spring and fall town meeting. Like to open for discussion. What should the calendar look like?
Can I just say something relative to your opening? Is that I don't think that there is a problem with our process.
Okay.
We didn't have many. I think there's been two in the history of this committee. There's been two articles that didn't pass a town meeting. So I think that what we've done up to now, as far as receiving the application, having a presentation to the board, vetting out the entire item that's being requested and so forth, getting the party ready for town meeting to answer questions. I think our process is good. All
Okay.
right. And I think historically, I think that proves it. That basically when we go to town meeting, I think we're ready. And just because other articles don't pass, that's the will of the town. I don't think it's a reflection of the application process. So as far as that goes, I think we're pretty well spot on. And if we can clean up where the application is, the flow of it and things like that, I think that would be helpful. But as far as the process itself, I think we're pretty well spot on.
Okay.
I don't disagree. I don't disagree with
Great.
Jim.
Okay, great.
I do want to clarify, we've had more than 2 articles fail.
Yeah, Apple Tree's effort
Yeah.
with the townhouse the first time failed, but then we came back, and then Hasselmess Woods once, and then
And the
this. I
dog
think
park.
this was, yeah. So I think that's 3, right? 4. What's the 4th one? Which
The
one
dog
did I miss?
park.
Oh, the dog
Well,
park.
yeah,
That was
it's free if you
before
don't
my
count the
time.
dog park.
In terms
Yeah,
of the process, I don't know that
Right on.
from our conversation that Roberta's really talking about the way we do it. It's pieces of the way we do it.
Yeah, we can
And
improve.
It's
certainly.
the application process. Do we do it twice a year? How do we fine tune what we're doing to be more efficient? Do we do it online? Do we, so that people can actually look, so that if you are just a member of the public, you can go look. Once somebody files an application, it would appear on our website, on an associated linked website. So somebody would just click and it would say proposed warrant articles. Bing, there it goes. To try to have better communication with the selectmen before town meeting, so that they have a pretty good, they're given the opportunity to comment, to proactively go to them and say, here are the proposed articles. We haven't voted. We haven't had our we're going to call it a public, I believe, public meeting, or potentially call it a public meeting rather than a hearing, because we've been doing that. It's okay to have a public hearing, but that's not what the law requires. The hearing is for us to have comments on our plan. So those are kind of 2 different things, and that we would separate those out. So there are those kind of things that we're trying to do better, add to what we're doing now.
Yeah, I would say that what we're looking for is to clean it up, as you said, Jim, and also to document it so that you can do it the same way twice, and people can anticipate how it's going to happen too. In fact, Jim, you said that you need to clean up how to share the application, and then you said something else that you wanted to clarify, and I didn't catch that.
You're muted.
He's not remembering.
Gosh, don't fix that. Whoever turned that
I,
off.
I keep it up.
Oh,
Justin,
there,
that's
now I'm
I
unmuted.
Justin,
It
I
took me
had
that
oh,
long
okay.
to unmute.
Go
I
ahead, Justin.
think what I was saying is just in the application process itself, the automation of that is, I
Okay.
think, something that we're still fine tuning.
So you
Okay.
can fill it
having
out
that
online,
available.
you mean, right? Jim?
Exactly.
So you like the idea of having an electronic application format like you use for the building department and so forth? Because
Be much
you
easier.
may be able to use actually the building department's program to have your own application through that.
Justin has a quick question.
Yeah, it's less of a question, more of additional commentary there. That, and boy, I think the overall way the CPC in general, including this year, has gone for approving things to go to town meeting. I think that's been wonderful and has worked very well. Like to be with Jim there. The second thing is, at least for planning, for the planning board, they always have every development project gets posted as its own like little page section on our website. And then if anyone has a comment of a particular project, that comment goes into the public record on our website. So when that happens, anyone can look at what all the comments were. These are digital comments outside of the meeting, but they're still considered for the planning board to consider when they're looking at the project to make a final vote. And then I think, to what John was saying, having the projects as they're submitted to us go up to the CPC website on the Groton website in a section that's for projects or proposed projects, even past projects, having the ones that have already passed have the application and details up there. I think that would be go a long way toward helping keep people informed and helping us and the public make informed decisions about what we want to do with the CPA funds.
So it's actually one of the things that I wanted to cover was whether having a
Can I just interrupt?
website. Yes, go ahead.
The projects do go on the CPC website.
Okay.
I just don't know that people know how to get there and find it, but adding the ability for comments is very good. But we typically put on Facebook that the project is coming up, and it's a link actually to the website.
I'll say I have not noticed that, and I consider myself pretty technology savvy, so to speak, but I'll have to look again, and if there's something missing, maybe I can recommend a way to improve the transparency there or not. But I'll touch base with you offline, Joanne, to try to see where my disconnect was.
I mean, I'm not suggesting there isn't tremendous room for improvement in the way it goes up and the way it's presented, but I don't want folks to think that that's one of the things that got implemented about 18 months ago, that these projects are up for the public to see. They used to be hard copies sitting in the library and in the planning office. Okay,
Can I know I'm the newest person on here, so I haven't been around for the whole rollout of all these CPC projects, but I think there is a problem with how they're being presented. I mean, you just listed 4 things: a dog park, apple tree, this recent park, and whatever the other thing was. CPC was, initiated to fund projects like this that ordinarily wouldn't be under the capital budget because people don't want to spend money on that. And here we have money put aside to do those things. And for the life of me, I can't understand why people would be against a dog park or fixing a historic building or putting in a park. I mean, what is this money being saved for? So I don't know if it's being presented like that park that just got voted down. I don't know if it was presented well enough from the town or CPC. I mean, I think it's financial malpractice that they took $240,000 to pave a parking lot when they could have had $1 million park. And it wasn't. I don't think it was explained well enough, because it makes no sense to me. So I don't know if it's a responsibility of CPC to help shepherd those through, or is it just somebody comes with a good idea and CPC says, yeah, we'll fund that, but then it's hands off. If that's the case, then I guess everything's working Well, I always thought
Okay.
CPC maybe took more of a role in it, but maybe they don't.
To
No,
me,
you
what
know,
I,
if I could
Just-
just jump in and let you know that basically the whoever is the applicant brings the plan forward. And then during the CPC meeting, we'll go over that with them. And then a member of the CPC will work with them as that project rolls on. We will always encourage them to make sure that they're at town meeting, because they would talk about like the different, like the historic commission or the recreation department or something like that. They would talk about the proposal that they had made, all right? So that we then become the vehicle, and we will assist as it goes along, and we'll point out areas where more information is needed and things like that. But basically what we do is to prepare them for town meeting. And then it's up to the town meeting members to decide whether or not they want to spend the money like that.
No,
The dog
I
park,
get
for
that last
example.
part, but do you, I'm gonna let you finish. Just, so we're not there to help shepherd it through. It's kind of, you're a liaison, but you don't take control of.
Yes, yes and no. Paul has something to say, and then I would like to say something.
So
Well, I cut off Jim anyway.
Jim is
Thank
completely
you.
correct on that on that point. It is up to whoever brought the project forth to help to get it through, and you know that's been the way since as long as I can remember. Not that we don't assist in some ways. We try to critique when they present. The first people they're selling it to is us, right? Because if we don't see value in it, we're not going to suggest that it go forward to town meeting. So they sell us, and we provide our input and critique and things that they need to do to adjust their presentation. So we help them in that way. But as far as, you know, shepherding them through, you know, all the nuances in town, the 4 projects that didn't get approved all had controversy around them. Above and beyond anything that CPC had to do anything with. So, you know, those things are going to happen. You know, it's not to say that people on the committee don't get involved, don't have an interest, don't stand up and fight it. But as a committee, it's not our responsibility to get it, the final approval through. Can I kind of change subject, going back to what Roberta brought up originally, which was talking about changing the frequency with which we do grants? I am not a proponent of that. It's already, you know, at twice a year. It is hard for people to work it around their schedules. You know, and they're trying to get funding together. If you go to one time a year, it really is going to.
Let me explain
People.
why I said that, because I am a proponent of once a year with exceptions, and we talked at length about what those exceptions would be. It's something that's time sensitive that otherwise would have a problem. But by doing it once a year, by doing it in the spring, that gives the applicant all January through March, all fall and January through March, to work on their application, to meet with us, that we would have a meeting, a grant writing workshop with one or more of the members to discuss how we do this, to discuss their project, what's good about it, what more they might need. And then those would be due, just like at town meeting, the main stuff is in May. Anything else, if there's something that comes up, there's a piece of land and we need to vote on it, we can have a special town meeting if it falls before or after the October, but also that would be one of the limited exceptions. We want to be flexible, but we also want to say we need to focus, because the summertime is dead, people are gone, it's hard to get a quorum. You know, there's a lot of reasons people aren't around to get work done. This is a different scenario with people on Zoom, but to try to do the bulk of the work in the spring and to do less of the work in the summertime, unless there's a very urgent need to have it put on the warrant. Certainly we would entertain it. It's not like there's an absolute no, but it's okay, well, we want to do this for the Historical Society. We want to do more conservation. It's like, that's great. Bring it to us for the Maytown meeting. This isn't something, they're not going to disappear between now and then. But if somebody's selling property, we've got 90 days or 60, whatever. We need to have a vote and make the money available. That certainly would rise to the level of, yes, we need to deal with this, and that's not a problem. But if you're understanding what I'm saying.
Yeah, I don't recall that conversation, so I must have missed it.
No. Joanne and I and Roberta had that yesterday.
Okay. As long as we have that built in, and there's one that you didn't mention. I know it because I've been involved in these projects. Sometimes you have to come back. Maybe your estimate was off, and you need to come back. And to wait a whole nother year would be really problematic.
No, I mean, and we don't want to do that. We don't, but we also want to make sure that, and I think that learning from this last project with Super Park, which we'll speak to a little bit later, that why it didn't pass, or trying to tease out why it didn't pass. One of the reasons was it really ready at this town meeting? Did it get pushed too quickly? So that if we would have said, this really isn't ready now, you need to come back, we'll let it come back in October, because it is a money thing. But we want you to have all these things and to set up a list of things for guidelines, not just the way we have our application now, but that we have multiple things, like on the Mass Historical Preservation Projects grant. You have to address in your application, so there's a lot more narrative on what your project is and how it meets our goals, which will be developed and included in this plan, so that all that will work together. But it's going to make the application process a little more in depth, a little, not, I don't know if it's more complicated, but it will require more work. It's more than, I need $100,000. Here's a sketch of what I want. And, we have to be a little more, we want to stay flexible, but we also want to say, okay, we need more from you, from the applicant, rather than just a yes, that a check on, yes, this is historically important for the town, or yes, the Recreation Commission is in favor of it. We want that letter. We want to have a requirement that I propose, we talked about it, that there are requirements, that there are checkoffs, that this goes to the town administrator, so that that office can vet it and say, Highway can do a lot of stuff for the common project. You don't need to go out to bid, just like one of the parks. The Highway Department, Joanne said, we got ahead of ourselves. The Highway Department could do that and save us a lot of money. So to try to do those kind of things to make the work of the committee more effective and utilize the resources of the town and make it more open and have better communication with everybody.
Yeah. I don't know that would help with the library project, though, would it? That whole thing was, the timing was predicated on the construction going on, unless it could have waited till October and still met their timeline. I don't know. Maybe Brooke knows me or you.
No, well, I think it is that did want to take advantage of the parking lot not being done now, so it was maybe rushed, where if the parking lot wasn't going in, they might have waited till October. But I mean, you hit upon a couple of things. I think the projects are good. I heard from a number of people that the town can't afford it. It's it's the money is this, the money. It's like they don't understand CPC funding. I mean, there are people on committees who are saying the town can't afford this park at this time. Because of state funding. I mean, I don't know if this committee, and I'm not blaming anyone, because listen, I understand you can say something 100 times and people will listen, look at you and say, yeah, I get it. And then they can say the exact opposite on the 101st time. But I was kind of shocked at the amount of people in positions you'd think would say that this was too expensive, that because of state funding at this time. I mean, it just doesn't
something we
fit into what
discussed
CPC
yesterday, that we're going to have to do an affirmative, rather than them say, or for people come to us to understand, for us to go to various committees to send a letter out to say, when can we meet with your committee to explain what we do, to explain what's available, what funding projects are available, what funding projects are not available. This is our budget. This is what we spent. This is what we plan to spend. So that it's going to be
But how it works and
But
where
it's
the
gonna be-
money comes from and
Right.
what the money can be used for and what it
We-
cannot be used for. I mean, it's
We
just
continually try
astonishing
and
to me.
do that.
I know.
Continually.
I-
And
I
you
listen,
get
Paul, I'm not
somebody
blaming
that-
anyone. I'm not blaming. I'm just saying I was shocked with the amount of misinformation that comes out of town meeting after this committee's been. How long have you guys been around? Forever. You bring projects every year. You say the same thing every year, and people still don't get it.
And that's
It's
the
not
whole
your
thing.
fault.
You know, what'll happen is that we do this, we have handouts at every town meeting. We tell them what it's for. When someone brings a program forward, you know, and they have an element in there that they're looking to also get money for continued maintenance of a project, and we explain that to them again. But unless they're directly affected by this, what my feeling has been is that folks just don't, they're not listening when we're telling them this. It's on the website, and we continue to reinforce it. But until they have a substantial question, you know, you can't learn it for them, and you can't understand it for them. That's, you know, and we can't feed them pablum either. This is something that people have to step up and accept their own responsibility too. But I think that we've done that. And like John's saying, you know, maybe we can go out and make the rounds and tell people that again. But as you just said, Brooke, that people, if they're not in a listening mood, that it's not going to be absorbed.
I think people also want to hear what they want to hear.
Can I jump in with something?
Yep.
You know, early on with the committee, the chair, I can remember Keith doing this a number of times, would stand up before all the CPC articles at town meeting and talk about the finances. Would quickly go over what the surcharge is, you know, what it means to you, what the match is, the fact that we get state money. Because a former finance committee member at town meeting talked about doing away with CPC, which is, you know, throwing away state money. So he would, you know, stand up and talk about all that before the articles were even voted on. I know we all kind of shied away from some of that because town meeting was going to be outside, it was going to be hot. And then some of us didn't get an opportunity to speak in rebuttal to some of the incorrect information that was put out there. So that might be something you want to consider going back to, where it's just set with the moderator before the CPC articles. Someone from the committee, doesn't have to be the chair, it could be Ken as the treasurer, who by the way is having, oh no, he's back on. Okay, he was having a lot of technical issues. You know, to talk about the thing and what money we have and just go through all that really quickly. And now I'll be quiet.
Yeah, we could do that, and we just have something that was canned and essentially the same every year.
But change the dollar amounts and change the projects, you know, so
Right.
that
Right.
but I think that we do have to be, even though we have to send out engraved invitations, you know,
So
that's the problem, that we have to do that.
But she's talking at town meeting doing that, right?
No, I mean, literally, people need an engraved invitation before they get to understand. You know, we have it everywhere else, but they need it very, you know, right in front of them.
Would town meeting give us the time?
I would think
Talk
that
to our
the
new town
moderator would
moderator.
do that, if, depending on the meeting. Every time, I mean, even when I asked Ray to speak at the last meeting, he said, sure.
We could
So-
probably get it down to like 2 minutes.
Yeah, I was gonna say,
Yeah, as long as it's not
100.
110 degrees on the field.
Right.
I think, you know,
Or 12 midnight, right?
yeah.
But I think we all understand it pretty well. So therefore, we think everybody else understands it. Every time we go to finance committee, it's like we're starting from scratch because they have some new members. And so you're constantly re-educating everybody because there's so many different people involved and you don't have the same players all the time. So you do. It's not like you learn 1 + 1 is 2 and go on to second grade. Everybody's still learning the basics of what CPC is 8 years into it.
Yeah, John is right
If
about
I may,
that.
go ahead, Ken.
Mm.
I was thinking, if I may, I think at least to me, we've been on this exact point for quite a while, and I was going to ask if John is okay with moving to Roberta to say, does she have enough that she needs on this point, and what's the next point she needs clarification on or discussion on?
Yeah, so thank you. I'm taking what you're talking about right now and thinking about how you can present information about the CPC in different formats throughout the year. I'm going to take all of this and I'm going to develop some draft documents to talk about in a couple of months with you all, so that it will be more, fleshed out and concrete the next time we talk about it. Just a couple of really succinct questions that I had about your process. First of all, I understand it doesn't appear to me right now that you have a formal eligibility determination step in your application process. A lot of communities have this, where first a project will submit just a one-page form describing what it is they want to do, that the committee can determine this is eligible, please submit a full application, or this isn't eligible, it's not worth your time to prepare an application. Do you think that step would be helpful for you, or are you satisfied with the one-step process that you've had? Or am I
Can I just say,
misreading your
I
process?
can't ever remember having somebody come forward with a full-fledged application and we say, well, no, that's not what we do.
Okay.
So I think that would even lengthen the whole process. If we're having a pre-application, you're delaying matters. Excuse me, we've seen a lot of proposals come forward and they needed to flesh it out more. And that's helpful as we go over it with them. But to say, because basically anybody can come forward. Look at Roney Park was a private citizen that came forward with that request. So anybody can come forward and request it for as long as they meet the basic criteria as to where the funds are coming from, for what purpose.
What towns use that two-step process, the pre-application?
Well, the towns that I've worked in the past, a lot of them have used it. The cities who've come on more recently, Somerville, Medford,
Is
Malden.
it because the projects tend to be larger and more expensive? I mean, that's what I would see. That when you're looking for a lot of money, you really do, because you're trying to make sure that everybody's resources and the staff resources to review all this they're used wisely.
Not necessarily. I think the concern is that not everybody understands what is actually eligible for CPA. So, you'll get a project that is trying to create a new historic asset, for example.
Because they did that. We didn't, I don't know if we had a real application, but they did come to us because they wanted to continue the history of Grafton, which is wonderful, but we couldn't fund it. Paul.
I think Justin was first. Go ahead, Justin.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
You got a bigger hand.
All I was going to ask about is, do we do that either through John or through even Joanne? Do people talk to us ahead of submitting an application to kind of get a sense on, is this something that we can do?
It could be informally. It doesn't necessarily have to come to the committee. It could just be a staff.
Yeah. Because my takeaway in the past was that I was led to believe this myself, that that's what happens, but I never formally asked the question. So I figured that's something to ask. That's something that either of you take on outside of a full committee to say, yes, that does qualify.
Yeah. So I would say, from being somebody that did all this before I joined the committee, yes, you definitely reach out to someone and try and feel out whether it's something that would qualify. I would point out we have a checklist, and it tries to get to the points of whether or not a project hits on a lot of key factors for the various things that we will fund under the broad categories: affordable housing, historic, blah, blah, blah. Maybe we could leverage that as a tool, and have something on the website to direct them to that to see if their project hits on some of those key points. That might help to give them some direction prior to submitting it. But
I
I
think-
also agree with Jim. You don't want to add necessarily an extra step. You want to help people, but you don't want to make it an extra step to get through the process.
I think by I don't know, redoing is the right word, but revising our current application to literally have 3 different applications, so that you have one for affordable housing, one for historic preservation, one for open space and recreation. And it could have like a secondary, this also applies to or also falls under, but you have a primary focus of it so that you can then target, does this involve for historic preservation? Does this deal with maintenance? It does not qualify, so that early on in that application they can see, and then the checklist will say, all the little things that are in there, so that people understand that these things have to be, you have to submit proof or document or a narrative to explain why those things are relevant, important, or critical for preservation.
Can I just make a zoom point just for a second? Is that I'm not seeing like everybody's picture and everything. So what, all of a sudden I start talking and somebody else had raised their hand. I didn't see that. So I'm not actually as rude as I probably appear to be. But if somebody was looking to say something and I cut them off, I apologize. I just wasn't aware that you had raised your hand.
You see this finger?
John, can I?
No, Brooke, I'll give you the finger anytime.
Joanne.
Yes, John, I think Ken wants to say something. I think Ken wants to say something, and you have a question in the Q&A. So if you could take care of those, that'd be great.
Okay, I didn't hear the second. You said Ken, and then
Ken, and then Kristen has her hand up.
Okay.
Andrew.
Okay, because she's not on my screen.
Okay.
She's on page 2. Sorry, Ken.
Okay, well, I agree with Jim. We don't need an extra step. It's not a problem that we've really ever had. But I also think that John's idea of having 3 different applications just sidesteps the whole issue altogether.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Kristen. Wherever you come out.
I had raised my hand back when we were talking about timing and once or twice a year, but I just wanted to say I think I'm in favor of annual applications as well, just because with the park project, like one of the things that kept coming up was, people were taking back the money to use it for something else that they thought was more important or more valuable, but it wasn't even really defined yet. So I think if all of the projects are on an even playing field competing against each other at one time, and you can get like a, overall opinion, these are all the things that are requesting money. I'm not going to promise one something and then something else later is going to come up and I'm going to wish I had the money for them instead. So I would just agree with the annual. That's all.
I see Ken.
Well, I hear what you're saying, but about annual, but we've never really had a problem doing it the way we do it with twice per year. We've actually almost never, in fact, I've been treasurer now for, I can't remember how many years, it's like a dozen. And I don't remember any particular year where we said that, well, we have so many projects we can only do, so many out of the pool. We've never had that problem. And I don't project having that in the near future. So I don't think it's a problem that needs to be solved either. And doing it twice per year gives everybody gives all of the grant recipients more flexibility, just way more flexibility. Once per year would make the funding just so slow that it wouldn't be that useful. It's much more useful if it can happen twice per year. That's what I was going to say.
Having it twice a year, or once a year rather, isn't a function or create a issue with, we only have X dollars and we have to decide at one meeting. It's more to try to put the bulk of our work when people have the full year, the full school year for a fiscal year to do it, to do the planning, to do the organization, meeting with us, and then submitting an application. And that anytime there's an issue, emergency, anything that's time sensitive, that certainly would be something that would be entertained to be an application for the summer meeting or for the fall town meeting. But it's just to try to push as much planning. This is to make a better application in the spring rather than over the summer when nobody's around and it's difficult to do things, that you have stuff just pop up. Ken?
I don't think having only one per year is going to make applications any better. They can take a year to plan for it, starting at mid-year or starting at the beginning of the year. They can still take a year to plan for it. We often work with grant requesters and suggest that they're not ready and they should slip another half year. And that gives them the ability to go back and fix things up and not have to wait a whole freaking year before they can do the project. So again, I don't think it's a problem that we have. And it's not that hard for us to do it twice per year.
Well, I think we also have to consider who has involved in doing it, because Joanne has limited hours to do a lot of our work because she works also for the selectman's office. So, it's not just us. And, that I would like to have her input on in terms of her job flow, if this would help, if it would hurt, if it would make a difference.
So I appreciate the question, but I think that shouldn't play into this. I think, it's what works best for the town, because whether it's, 2 projects in May, 2 projects in the fall, it's going to be 4 projects at one, you know what I mean? Like, I think it's what's best for the town. And please don't forget you have a question in the Q&A.
Oh, I'm sorry. Justin, let me
go ahead. Q&A first if you want. That's fine.
Margaret Haynes, how can you get the message across in town meeting when there are people on other boards and committees who are deliberately misinterpreting what CPC can do? That's from Margaret Haynes. I think that's an excellent question. I don't know how to get rid of the picture of it, but I'm not dismissing you, Margaret, but I think I have to click on something so it'll close.
Now you're answering it live, so you can.
Sorry, Margaret, but we're going to address your question. That's an excellent question. I guess it's to have a better relationship with the town moderator, to be able to be recognized and to be able to speak, because, other ballot issues or warrant articles, people could pop up and defend what was being said. I tried to do that. And because there were people in the gym, there were people outside, people were yelling. 3 times I tried to speak, and I know he was recognizing me, but 3 other people kept talking. So it's tough. Maybe when we're inside again, it won't be as difficult, but I do agree that if there are things that are said that are not accurate, that we have to have before the debate is cut off, we have to have an opportunity to correct inaccurate statements. And unfortunately, we just didn't have enough, as many opportunities on Saturday to do that. Does anybody else have a comment?
I wasn't there, so I can't comment. I was away.
I don't have a comment at this time for what you just said for answering Margaret now.
But, one of the comments was, we'll just take a break from CPA. It's like, and I did address that. I said, we can't take a break from CPA. You can vote to eliminate CPA, but then you're still going to have CPA for as long as we have bonds. And I explained that. I said, you'll still have that money taken out for X number of years until all our bonds are paid. You'll get no new projects. You'll get no more state match.
Well, John, one of the things I think that was a little disturbing about that comment too was there's almost an inference that if we take it away, money will then go to other things in the municipal government. I felt like it was presented like that tax money will go someplace else, when in fact what would happen is that tax money would just go into people's pockets. I was really concerned that folks were going to leave there with this idea that, oh, if we get rid of CPC, then there's money, you know, $400 and some thousand a year available for something else, which it isn't. It just
Goes away.
goes away and we don't get the state match.
Right. And so
Yeah, and
that's,
you're taking $100 from each household for historical recreation, affordable housing, and, you know, stuff that the budget will never address. That was the whole point of CPC from the beginning, that people will never address these things. They'll never fix parks. They'll never put in historical preservation. They'll never do these things. So why not get rid of it? Because it's the only thing the whole town can participate in. So let's take away the $100 for every, because, you know, because that's going to balance a budget, which, to Joanne's point, has nothing to do with the budget. And you have people who are on committees saying this, which, again, I've been to meetings for years and has heard the spiel from any one of you many times, and still stand up and say things like that. It's just, I find that very frustrating. I don't know, and I don't know how to get around it. And I hope no one thinks I'm blaming the committee. I'm not. I just don't know how to get people to understand how this little bit of money goes to actually make their life better. But anyway.
Can I just...
You're right. If I could just say that you can't understand it for someone else. We present our program, we present the position, we present the criteria, but if no one's listening, then it's falling on deaf ears, literally.
Can I had somebody say to me, they had taken the survey and they were like, holy cow, CPA funds of like what they've done in this town, it's unbelievable. And that wasn't even a full list. I wonder if we could, as a marketing tool at some point, list every single thing. And then so if you lived in town when we first adopted CPA, how much did it actually cost you? You know, I wonder if we could work with the assessors, take the average household value and over however many years, they have to start at like 2002, 2003, what was the average home value? So what would they have paid in CPA surcharge, and do that for every single year coming forward and add that up. And so that's what the average homeowner has paid since the inception. And look at what you got.
Pennies on the dollar. And
Yeah.
any marketing we can do, people don't realize everything that's been done through
I know
CCA
people
funding.
don't read the Grafton News as religiously as they used to.
No.
But if we could do either somebody on the committee, I'll volunteer to do one. If everybody volunteers to do one or two, to write up a brief article and have a photograph and a regular somehow dissemination of this is a project that CPC did, when it was done, how much it cost, have some photographs. It doesn't have to be a whole lot, but it would make the paper better, and maybe it would make something that people could read and understand.
And I should say, I've witnessed the Grafton Common, which does not have a print edition. It's a local news outlet that actually has been covering more local news than Grafton News has.
Okay.
So we can reach out we can publish it to both. You know, there's no reason we can't.
Anybody who will take it, you know,
Yeah,
it's like,
exactly.
Please. Roberta.
Yeah, I wanted to suggest this is a great idea to market. Think of these ways of marketing what the committee does and what kind of content you can put out there. And one of the things that we could do in documenting what your committee does over the years, so there's your application process, working back from 1 or 2 town meetings, we can, you know, put both options out there and see what you want to move forward with. But in addition to that, so you could define a period of the year in which you're going to look at what your needs and priorities are for the coming year and hold a public hearing during that period of time. And you could also designate a period of time in the calendar when you're going to submit to the newspapers, to your media, a report about what CPA did over the last year, what projects have been completed that were funded in prior years, and inviting people to submit applications for the coming year. So if you put that in your calendar, it can help to make sure that this gets done every year at a certain time. So rather than everybody writing articles over the course of a few months and then not doing it for several years after that, it would just happen
But also
on schedule.
that as part of the application process, they're supposed to submit a regular quarterly report, which most, if not none, do, photographs. To me, and it's like, this is going to be hard and fast. If you do not submit the report, if you do not submit photographs, your invoices will not be paid until they're submitted. The state does that. We can do that. We'll get it. And then they've done our little story. All we got to do is tweak it and put it. They've written the narrative. They have the photographs. It's there. And then you just plunk it where it needs to go. Rather than us having to create out a whole cloth, it should be on the applicant to do this work. And I think we really have to to be more stringent on that one of those. It's a requirement rather than a suggestion, I guess. Justin, sorry, no glasses. That's part of it too.
That's okay. Yeah, if I may just jump backwards just slightly, and just two thoughts I had there is that on the twice a year or once a year, I am in favor of twice a year, but I don't feel very strongly on that. So that, I'm not worried if we do it once a year or not in the end, but I do have liked that we do it twice a year, at least in the past. So I wanted to say that. And then on the other piece about how we do have those informal chats if someone doesn't have, a good idea if CPA funds can fund their thing. I would think it would make sense to have a process that lets them come before us with a document if they are not sure. If they want to do, ahead of a formal application, can I come before you to say, does my, can I maintain, an indoor tennis court, with this? Well, that's an easy answer for us as a no, because you can't do indoor rec, but, and you can't do maintenance. But the idea is allowing a, quick without a full application to try to get in front of us.
And I think
I think
have
we've
some
done
kind
that.
of a workshop before a month before the actual process begins in the fall, and I guess in the summer, so that they've got a month before anything is due. Come, talk to us, sit down, find out what they need, if this is a good idea, what have you, so that they do have that opportunity, but to formalize that.
Yeah, that's what I was getting at. Like I was thinking having it, formalized that, we have this opportunity for you to do this if you want to, if you think, or you're pretty sure that it definitely does fall within our, CPA funds or, whatever, then you can skip that. You don't have to do it, but it's.
No, right. It's an optional thing, but it's there if you need help. Jim.
But I think we've always done that. I think we should see ourselves, and I think we have seen ourselves, not only as CPC members, but more or less as ambassadors of the CPA program, in that I know that all of us have been approached by someone who'd say, gee, it'd be nice if something like this happened. And then what we would do would be to invite them to a meeting to talk about it, and then if need be, help them bring an article forward if there is some kind of consensus that this is something that's valuable for the town. I think we've done that. I don't think anyone has ever been disadvantaged. I think that as soon as someone I know has approached me over the years, that what I do is invite them to the meeting, and on every agenda there's a public comment section, so it fits, and kind of go from there.
But I think just the conversation we had yesterday is like maybe in January, 30 minutes before our meeting, or we delay our regular meeting 30 minutes. If people want to come in, we have a informal workshop. If nobody comes, then we just sit there and we visit. That they do have an opportunity to talk. But at town meeting, somebody said, well, we don't need this park, but we need an indoor, we need a gym for something. And it's like, nobody got to stand up to say, we can't do that. So they're thinking, we don't want the park, but we want something else. And you can't even explain to them, even if you vote this down, we can't build you a gym. It just can't come from CPA. So I think we do have to be have a more concerted effort to try to reach out, to try to be more visible, to try to be more public, to bang our own drum. And I think, I don't think any of us are really big on banging our own drum, but we have to go out there and pat ourselves, not necessarily ourselves, but the town on the back and say, look what you've done. Look what you brought forth. Look what you've done with your resources. So it's not a committee thing. We're saying, look what the town has done over the last 15, 20 years, how we've leveraged dollars, that it's not just CPC money, it's not just state, it's federal, it's local, it's grants, it's foundations. And that's the whole point of it, is to try to get as many funding sources as possible, and that we're the stimulus.
Have we ever done a subcommittee to talk about things that like this that really would benefit from a group of us meeting and just talking out of this? We could still, obviously it's got to be a posted meeting, and I'm not saying that, but just to talk about this topic and the marketing, because it really seems like it needs to be an ongoing effort, and that we need to find ways to get word out, and that changes over the last several years. We've had a number of different media type outlets, whether it's been some of the various online ones versus Facebook, and of course you got Grafton. I mean, it's a changing landscape, and I think that it's really one that warrants our looking into maybe with a little more detail, so that we can come up with a game plan for an ongoing effort to market ourselves, not ourselves, but CPA, and what we can provide, what we have provided, and how it benefits you. I think if it was ongoing, that maybe we'd hit more people.
Are you volunteer to serve?
I'd participate in that for sure.
Can I just throw in that this is something perfect for Grafton Community Television, and that if we ever start to be able to use our studio again, really it's almost been a year since the move and then the build out and then the virus and all of that stuff there. But sitting down like with we've got John, Joanne, myself, we go back to being original members to sit there and reminisce about what we've done, but at the same time have background footage of the different projects and things like that. I think that'd be a nice presentation.
And if I may, just to address what Jim said a few minutes ago, is that I agree that we've done the, like inviting people to talk and discuss that. But I think if we're creating a formal written down process, that we're working toward doing, that having that informal inviting people to come in and discuss the projects, having it written down as a formal, it's not required, but you can do it, is something that I think we should do. And then to catch up in the conversation as well, I am fully in support of what Paul suggested us doing, as forming a subcommittee. I think I volunteered to be on that as well, and I think that's something that I don't know if we have to have the formal, we create it on another agenda first, but
if there's a subcommittee, you guys meet whenever you want to meet. You report to us.
My point was, do we need to have the creation of the subcommittee on an agenda before we
probably
split it out? That's what I was thinking.
And I just don't know about open meeting law with the subcommittee, how that works. So
as long as it's less than the majority. So no.
No, if you form a subcommittee, the subcommittee has to follow open meeting law, is my understanding.
Yeah.
So you do need
I figured they would.
But
that's not a problem.
No,
We can do that.
Probably another reason why you would want to maybe vote on this next month, so we could have our
Yeah.
Okay. No, but I
Let's
think
put it on the agenda for next month as a topic.
I just want to throw out there that if the subcommittee has to follow open meeting law, that means that you're also going to have to be writing minutes for those meetings and posting the agendas, and that's some administrative work that either you're adding to your administrator or a volunteer is taking on. Just want
A
to,
volunteer is going to have to take it on.
yeah.
I volunteered to take that on.
Yeah, me and Paul could probably switch it off for each
Yeah.
meeting if I'm going to be on that, because I don't mind doing it as well. And I think
I'm happy to do the agenda
Yeah.
for you. I don't know that I want to be on, I mean, I'd love to be on the committee. I don't know that I want to, but I would certainly do your agenda and post it for you. So
Yeah.
you just need to do your minutes.
And yeah, as I was just going to say, that I found in meetings, the person that's taking minutes is generally not as engaged in the meeting as everyone
Right.
else. So I would not be in favor of a single person always taking minutes in the subcommittee.
So,
That's fine.
I just have kind of a general question. I've been listening and everything, and I can imagine how frustrating it is. I mean, I'm relatively new to the CPA, but I mean, I had to learn a little bit more, but at least I had a clue what I was getting into. I you know, having a subcommittee trying to educate people, God love you, is it, you know, what's going to be kind of your ultimate goal? And because I just don't think people will engage. I mean, I don't think they're, I guess I am a little bit pessimistic that you'd be able to educate the general people who are showing up at town meeting.
I think we have to keep trying, even though, I mean, I agree
That's
with
fine.
you
Yep.
100%, because we've done all this, and every committee I've ever been on, we have so many open meetings and public hearings, and has anybody ever shown up? Maybe one person, if that. It's just, people don't get engaged, then they get engaged at town meeting. And I don't know how to fix that. I don't know if town meeting has a solution to fix that, because that's their chance to talk rather than to participate. It's a totally different dynamic. One is to tell, one is to ask.
Right.
I think
I
we give
wonder
it a
whether-
stab. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh.
Roberta.
I wonder whether, and this is just throwing an idea out there, it might or might not be the right idea, but whether this marketing subcommittee might also be responsible for the task of preparing an annual report of what you've done throughout the year, what your financial picture looks like right now, what your goals and priorities are for next year, so that then you're also responsible for marketing that study, making sure, you know, getting that information, that like not just feel good, but meat and bones information out to the people who need it every
That-
year.
We already do a town report, so it could be fleshed out or more. Joanne has been doing it since she's been working. And so we do have a pretty meaty, I would think,
Yep.
report that lists our projects. We talk about things that were completed. We talk about people that are coming and going. We talk about, I think, all the money that's come in. I mean, we literally track the different funds. We always say, you know, we have a busy year, but we don't say what we anticipate, because typically we don't know.
Yeah.
You know, it's hard to know, but what do you think, Joanne?
Well, Joanne's thinking, I think that's a good reason that we just don't need to do anything else. You know, we also have Joanne's spreadsheet showing all of the projects that we've had since day one. That's
Right.
been made available at town meeting. Some people have picked it up. If they have an interest, they look at it. Other people just leave it there because they're not interested. So for us to go around and say, like knocking on a door and saying, hi, let me save you. Let me tell you about CPC. You know, there's got to be a receptive audience there. So
There's got to
I
be
think
other ways. We got to use social media. We need to leverage the cable outlet that you've been a proponent of, Jim, for quite some time. There are different things that we could do that we're not doing. I think we just need to get a committee together to talk about it.
think
And I'm
if
not saying it's going to be a daily thing that we're doing, but to have some kind of a plan, and particularly around times when we are promoting a project or looking to get funding for a project, that we have some kind of organized approach to it. And I don't think we really have that today.
I think if we have a group that wants to do this, to work and then to report to us. I think that that's a great idea. That's a great help, and see how it works. It may work great. It may not be that we're getting any more traction, but we don't know until we try.
Yeah, and I would say to Sandy's point, like there's definitely going to be a bunch of people that just could care less, not going to pay attention. But the more we can, we can't always rely on people coming to us when they hear a project they might be interested in, and us trying to tell them about it and tell them how CPA funds can be used. We have to try to do other forms of outreach. To me, this is my opinion, of course, that social media, people will see stuff, or be more proactive in actual discussions, get letters published, or stories published in Grafton News and Grafton Common about particular projects that are either ongoing, like when we break ground at the Common, probably next year at this point, or and things like that. If we can do essentially, like we said, marketing of the CPA funds and the CPC projects, I think that would be people aren't gonna as great as it is, the town state of the town book we publish every year with our report. Not everyone reads that, especially if if they don't know much about CPC. They're not going to read what CPC did.
I would hazard to say most people don't read that.
Yes, that's what most people.
You and I do, but I don't know that
yes.
most people do.
And I'm certainly, if people want to, it could only make things better. It's just, I think, expectations are probably going to be fairly low on just how much. I mean, I think it'd be great if you highlight certain projects and get it going on certain social media and so forth. And God bless you. Go for it.
We already do use social media through the town to a certain extent, and we wouldn't want to get involved in some of the dialogue that can go, but to put out our story at least gets that dialogue going. So yeah, I'd be very interested in that, and I think it could be something that would help us over time. And it may not be a huge difference, but it gives us another avenue to try and educate folks.
Is there anybody
And
else
it's obviously
interested, like Brooke or Kristen? Brooke says yes.
I think it's obviously
I didn't hear what you
important.
said. Sorry.
When you consider the caliber of the people that are on this committee, it's obviously very important. Right?
May I make a suggestion? We had talked about putting this on next month's agenda. So
Yes.
how about, I think, you've sort of talked this to death, not to, but.
We're talking to life.
Highly insulting.
Yes, I think that's a really good idea. I think, we need to just get a few more details around meetings, things like that.
Yeah.
Get on the agenda for next month, come back and then talk about who wants to be on it, because then everybody can kind of spend this time also thinking, this is going to be a big time commitment, right? So many of you are already on this because you're on another board or committee, right? So I'm not discouraging anyone, but everybody wants to have a handle on their time and make sure that they can put into this what it's going to need.
Good point.
Okay, so nobody makes a rash decision tonight. Folks think on it and set this up next month. Good?
Okay.
Yeah, move the question.
Move the question, and Roberta is muzzled. We need to unmuzzle Roberta. Whatever you
Sorry,
call
people
it.
keep walking by my space and I don't want you to hear what's going on behind
Sorry,
me.
you're muted.
So one suggestion, I wonder whether you might even want to wait. My intention had been to spend our time together in July talking about the input that we got from the public process and put together a draft of what I think the goals and priorities sound like to me that came out of that public process. So that would be July. And then in August, I was going to come back to you with a draft of this timeline and a draft application and kind of instructions about how it works. So I wonder whether it makes sense to talk about the marketing and potential subcommittee once you have that draft and see what that timeline looks like and see whether there's a role that you think you want to work together on, or it's already clear what you need to do and you want to delegate out to individuals those tasks. So maybe
that okay?
August would be the time to put that on your agenda.
Makes sense.
I
So
agree.
I wanted to switch gears a little bit to talking about the application itself. I got feedback yesterday when I talked with John and Joanne, and I think I heard some of you also endorse the idea this evening that an online streamlined application process would be helpful. You know, you can use the software that the town already subscribes to put it all online, and then you might be able to track it more easily. And I think it would also be helpful to explore further how much content you're able to put up on your committee's webpage, and whether there's a way that you can optimize the content on your webpage so that people can track more thoroughly and easily what the CPC is doing throughout the year. So another question that I have is the current application format. How well do you as a committee feel that you're getting the information you need about the projects? Is there a lot of superfluous information that you're asking for that isn't helpful? Are there questions that you're not asking right now that you would really like the applicants to address in their applications?
I guess I'll start. I haven't had any issue with what we're capturing in there. I know it's a fairly long application, but I think a lot of that is because of the fact that it's got all 3 different types in there. So I like John's idea of trying to streamline that, although I would want to capture where there is some crossover. But I think the biggest thing is just making it easier for people to complete it. And by making it online, being able to be completed that way just makes it so much easier. And not only to complete it, but to submit it. And just having it electronic would be a huge step forward.
At least for me, I think Paul's points are the big ones that he already just mentioned, but over the last year, this is our first year on CPC, the projects that I've seen the applications for, trying to comprehend what was going on through those, 3 pages of, affordable housing, open space, and the question and answers we have in there, I found it very confusing to, pull out what's going on until they've come in and described the project. But I've so far attributed that to me just being relatively new on the committee and not so much as something was necessarily wrong. So, I can't provide any suggestions at this point, but that was just my initial takeaway from it.
It is confusing because there's 3 different applications essentially in one, and there's just so much there. It's a lot to weed through.
So many, the questions are yes, no, and it's not like you're grading a test and they're all supposed to be yes or they're all supposed to be no. So it makes it, if you don't see something that pops out to say, okay, well, you don't have enough of this, so you really, it's confusing in that way. But I looked up my word. We need to have a better rubric to grade all these. We need to have a standard to say, these are the 12 things we're looking for, or the 10 things. How well does this project meet our goals? How, we've set forth, and we did this with the committee to hire Roberta, that we came up and we had several things that were part of the RFP, and we followed the RFP. Did it meet this standard? Did it meet this standard? Did it meet this standard? 1, 2, 3. And whoever got the highest score or the lowest score, whichever way we were grading, that's who won or that's who lost, or did better or worse. Joanne?
Jim has his hand raised, and I don't know if he did it accidentally or if he's got a question.
No, I just to chime in on that. I've always seen these applications when they come to the committee. I've always seen them as really nothing more than a placeholder, so that they can come and address the committee. I don't think there's really anything that they can do beforehand in the application process that's going to answer everybody's concerns. more times than not, there are more questions that occur to me as they're making a presentation to the committee about what their proposal is for, and then questions that other committee members ask bring other thoughts to my mind. So, you know, I really don't want to get bogged down in so much paper that we're going to have them fill out. I think that if they come up with an idea, let them bring it to the committee, make their proposal, and then we can work with them, because I think it's just so much better to understand than trying to read through what everybody's writing style is different. But when you can sit down and you can talk and field questions and things like that, it makes it more of our own. You know what I mean? I'll put my hand down.
I'm trying to find something that historical does, but can't. Anybody else have a comment? I would like to see more, because typically we get 3 or 4 lines and that's it. And they're asking for $300,000. You know, I think it takes more than that. I think it's that, again, it's like, I want to be flexible, but I think they need to understand the seriousness of what we're doing. And if they're asking for a whole lot of money, we really need a whole lot of documentation. We don't want just, I think it's going to be. That, to me, that's toast. It's like, if it comes in like that, sorry, thank you very much. You need to come back next time.
I agree with that, John. I agree with that 100%. I'm just saying that for me, the most important part of the origination process is to have a conversation, to understand what they're doing, and they have to have the backup documents. They can't say, well, it's going to cost $300,000 without having itemized where it is, what they've done for pricing and things like that. They've still got to dot their I's, cross their T's, but I just get so much more out of their presentation and my ability to ask questions to learn about what their proposal is. But I agree with what you're saying completely.
And I agree with that too, because it's like you do your application for law school or for college. You want to have that personal interview where you sell whatever it is. And going to the Supreme Court, they may not even care about your brief. They're asking you all this other stuff. So it's like, I think that face-to-face is important too, but I think they need to do their homework as well. And that's what I'm saying. We need more homework.
I think we've had a lot of homework. I'm sorry, Roberta, go ahead. I didn't mean.
I wanted to know specifically what documentation is important to you. I imagine that seeing a budget supported by quotes is probably basic, but is there other documentation that's critical?
That if especially for historical, and that's why it's like, because we're not in a cycle where I can pull up a grant, that if this is historical, we do need Mass Historical Commission to, so that means you've had to prepare 6 months out, because usually this is the case. The day before the meeting, we need a letter, you know, and then you squeeze it in. They have to get the letter from whichever group, whether it's recreation, whether it's conservation, whether it's the land trust, whatever group needs to have a supporting document, which means you have to go and make a presentation to them and say, we're applying for $100,000 to do this. We need your support. Will you write us a letter and explain to them why you need it? And you're building your case. I think there are a lot of yes, no's in our application now, but it's just a check or a yes or no. It's like, do they support it? It's like, okay, I want to know why they support it, why they think it's important, why they think it's important now. You know, that's as important as what the people, it's like when you give a reference, they want 2 others. I want to hear what the 2 others have to say too. Because they may say, well, it's a good project, but we think, you know, maybe it's not ready right now.
I'd be hard pressed, John, on any project that we've had of any size to say that people haven't come to us with adequate preparation and documentation of what they're doing. On smaller ones, yes, but I think that there has to be some scale too.
We've
what
had
we require.
Projects that do not have real budgets.
Yeah.
That have asked for over $100,000.
I know there have been a few, but I'm hard pressed to find.
And we've sent them back. We've sent them back to clean it up.
Yes.
We
I'm
still,
hard pressed to say any we brought through. I can't think of one that didn't provide us with what we
you know,
were
to
looking
say
for.
that we
They
need.
may not have had it initially, and we've had to instruct them, and I don't think we're going to get away from that. But I think that we definitely need to
But we
help
need
them towards
pre-estimates.
that.
You know, it's like that's anybody else. If you're working for the town, and I want to buy widgets for $5,000 worth, I've got to get 3 bids. Otherwise, it's not legal. We have to set our own standards to say we want to know that people. Again, it's a lot more work, but I think it's going to get you better results.
Yeah, my only concern is that we over-regulate what we're looking for to the point where it becomes too cumbersome. So we're not at the scale of the state, and there's a lot of folks
The
that
state requires that for $25,000 for Mass Historical. So
I'm well familiar. I've applied many times.
And that's when you say, it really isn't worth my time. But the bigger the project, the more the documentation. I'm not saying I need a book this thick for a $12,000 new swing.
Right.
I get that.
Right.
But if you're building a whole new park, I want a whole lot of backup.
Yeah.
And
Yes. And those are the projects that, I'm sorry, Justin, let me just finish this point and then you can go. Those projects that are going to go forward are the ones that, people are willing to put in the time and effort. If they're not, those are the ones that aren't, we're either not going to put them forward or they're not going to make it through the scrutiny of town meeting. So the onus is on them to do that. I think we need to help them. I just don't want to create too many barriers in our approach to it. That's my only concern. Go ahead, Justin. I'm sorry.
Yeah. All I was going to say is, well, one thing I would like to see that many projects have done, at least something of this sort, is, this is for me personally, is if a project's coming to us, have essentially like a cover letter like you might have on a resume application. Like just say, describe what you're wanting to do, just, why CPA would be a good fit, and, kind of like cover letter length, is kind of how I think of it. Meaning, I want to create a, community park as, the example that will, be a benefit to the community, accessible, CPA is a good fit because yada, 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 and I think that is something that, would help at a glance. Yes, it does fit. Or we might have immediate, questions or comments that we can provide them that, okay, well, you're looking to do a tennis court that you might want to build indoors, but you have the open space land right now. You could make it an outdoor one and we could actually fund you. Those kind of, comments could, help, like a quick glance as well. I don't necessarily think that every project we need it. Like, I don't necessarily think a full 1-page sheet for, kind of restorations Candy is doing right now that we've just recently passed is the type of thing that we will need a cover letter kind of description for, but
Cover letter would help. I agree.
yes.
John,
My feeling is the same, is that what's wrong with what we've done up to now? Have you had any situations where you did not feel comfortable bringing an article to town meeting? We vet it, we discuss it with them. If need be, we send them back to provide us additional information. I just don't see it. I get nervous about when I listen Paul talk about making this so cumbersome that someone says, forget it.
It's me.
I don't think
it's me, not Paul.
Okay,
No,
well,
I said that too.
well, you're both right. But my point is that I don't think there's anything materially wrong with what we've been doing all along. And I don't think that we have to just start thinking about scrapping everything and going back to square one.
We're not.
We don't.
We're not.
All right.
That's
I just think
not my. We're just adding a little bit more. We're trying to make it a little more fleshed out.
But John, let me ask you this question. You and I have been around since the very first meeting. Can you ever remember one article that came to town meeting that you don't think we vetted before it went on the meeting floor?
And I think we missed this one. One of the commons failed. did that get included on a little list the first time? Because it was not ready.
One of
And
the
if
what?
for the restoration of the common, I think we wanted $10,000 or $30,000. It wasn't a whole lot of money, and it
No,
got because it was for the
We
plan.
never, we only brought it to the town once. We did,
No, we did. This is the second time we brought for the plan or something, and it got defeated.
that's
But
been
the
before
point
my time.
is, look at all of the articles that the committee has brought forward to town meeting. All right, and my question is, can you think of any that we weren't ready to bring forward?
I think there were some that we could have been better prepared, but I also think it's not our job at town meeting. I mean, it's good that we want to stand up, but it's the applicant that needs to stand up and say,
Exactly. But what I'm getting at is that what we've been doing all along, other than, like making a better application, doing more outreach and things like that, we need that. But the basic process of what we've done has been good. And let's not lose sight of that.
no, I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that.
John Roberta needs to talk.
Yep.
Sorry. So I wanted to actually maybe bring this back that we're talking. So what got us into this is whether we might, in the application process, make it too complicated, ask for too much documentation. I think that what I'm going to do is draft something that identifies specific required documentation, which is going to be a budget, and if letter from the historical commission or some kind of approval from another board is going to be required in the process, to identify that in the application, so that you have that whatever documentation is going to be required is there. But we're not talking about adding any requirements. We're just talking about identifying what you already should be requiring, so that they know that they need it before they come to you and you have to send them back for it. But there is one thing that I wanted to consider seeing if you would want to add to the process, which is early on, before they've submitted an application to you, ask that the applicant have a meeting with your, the development team. So the town staff who are, the town manager and the planner and the town staff who look at development projects, and it's informal. They sit down, give their presentation, and that gives the town staff, who have the big picture of everything that's going on in town and what your resources are, the opportunity to input and say, you can use our crew to be able to do this portion of this project, or that this is in the pipeline and you can coordinate with something that's already happening in the town. So that the idea is just that they get to have it on their radar, what CPA might have in the pipeline coming up. It's not an approval process, but asking for their signature, just saying we've met with them, ensures that there's a mutual understanding of what might we need to be aware of as we submit an application to the CPC. So that was a suggestion that I had from the town manager as I was talking with him, and I wanted to bounce this off of you before I write it into the draft.
For me personally, I lean toward that is, generally speaking, a good idea, but I'd be hard pressed to say that it should be a requirement. Like, I think that if they don't meet with the town departments, we should require that at least some sort of notice goes to them to say that this is coming before the CPC, and some information in some way, so that they do have an opportunity to at least provide our committee with their thoughts. But I'd be hard pressed to say it should be a requirement, just because not every project would necessarily need that, and there could be I've experienced situations in this town and even other towns that I've been in where there are committees that are responsible for approving projects, but developers go before, town employees first, and then the town employees basically, say, well, no, that's not going to work because X, Y, Z, and then those committees actually would have wanted the way they initially proposed it, or at least have seen the way they initially proposed it to help for their decision making. And oh, well, actually seeing that on our record helps us actually say, well, this other plan does work out a lot better, but without having it on the record, they can't make that formulation on their decision making process. So personally, I'd be hard pressed to require it.
Joanne?
I hear what you're saying, Justin. I'm wondering, it's just a matter of getting the application to that team. Because I'm thinking back, we had a couple of projects, Airport Park, I think was the one, where we were going to do a lot of work, and it was like, and the DPW came to us and was like, what, you guys are crazy? Like, we can do this in-house and save a whole bunch of money. And that was like one of the first times the committee said, oh, we bringing in the town departments to see. And the same thing happened with the work being done at the Lions Field. Much of that has been handled by Brian, saving tens of thousands of dollars. So I just, when Roberta, John and I spoke yesterday, I think we had talked about just having every proposal go to the town administrator, not for approval, but just go to him, so that he knows what's going on and he can say, well, I can have these folks help with this before town meeting for funds. And I think, Roberta, when you spoke to him today, he talked about his development team. So,
and I'll just kind of expand briefly from what you just said, Joanne, is that I was absolutely not thinking that we shouldn't give them a copy of the proposal or something like that. I think that they absolutely should have that, because there could be things, especially if we have a cover that says what they're trying to do, there could be things that, like you said, the Airport Park, well, DPW can help with that, or the Lions Club, or we actually have someone that can do this type of work. That type of information is good for both us as a committee and good for the applicant to have. So I think even if they don't set up a meeting, I think having the application, that process be presented to them in some way is something that is absolutely wonderful.
Yeah, I guess I kind of thought that we were doing that. They certainly see our minutes.
Bingo.
They certainly see our minutes. And I do know that, last year CIPC was looking to be involved. And I definitely think that communication is key. I mean, we regularly go before the finance committee. We should probably regularly go before CIPC, because there are some things that we can't fund that maybe they can, and vice versa. Maybe there are things that, they're struggling to fund that actually we could help with. So I think communication is really important on that. Someone's snickering at me.
If I can just chime in too, I think that we've been doing this. And as part of the discussion of the different articles and things like that, we've sent people to check with the planner or someone else to see if something could be done by one of the town departments. I think we've done that. What I get nervous about, and what Justin is saying is completely valid. What Joanne is saying is completely valid. What you're saying, Paul, is completely valid, is that we share the information. What I don't want to see is to add another layer. Say, okay, you need to have this document signed showing that you went and talked to the planner or to the DPW or to whoever. I don't want to see anything added to the application process.
Right.
But
that should be our role.
Sharing it internally is helpful. Sure.
Yep.
I want to emphasize that 1,000% more, Jim, is that at the end of this story for me is a defined process that is ideally even easier than it is today for the applicants. Something that can be, streamlined, easier for the applicants to do, and to get in front of us, but without having us lose information we feel we need. And I would I would find the process to be a little bit of a failure to me if it's harder than it is today in the end. So I think that's something that should be one of our big points to take away out of it.
I don't think the purpose or the goal of having the town administrator or the planner review or see this before we vote on it is to remove information. It's just to get their 2 cents if they have 2 cents. They may say this is great. They may say, we can help. They may not have any comment.
And like to circle back a little bit on the same overall point, but where planning has each project on its own page, frequently we'll have a call out to the police or fire or even the zoning board of appeals to provide a comment or not. Most of the
But
time,
you used to do that.
yeah, most of the time
Historical used to
the-
get those every month.
Yeah.
We don't get them anymore. And we had to, no matter what it was, if it was relevant to us or not, we were supposed to respond to that, and that's disappeared. So you're not getting our input from anything anymore. So you've streamlined us right out of it.
but that happened before my time on planning. But my point
No,
is,
but I'm just saying that's
yeah.
that's what can happen is, and I'm not trying to make it cumbersome. That's not my intent at all.
Yeah, my main point is that at least on the individual pages, we as members could see the applications before we have a formal meeting, which is great. Any member of the town community or even the town departments could see it. We would also, in theory, send it out, or the applicant would send it out to the town administrator, the planning office, and then if they have comments, they could either write the comments. They may have nothing. They could leave it blank, or they could put a comment saying no comment at this time. Those planning development projects get from ZBA or the fire department no comment at this time often. So having that opportunity for that to come in without us necessarily making anything cumbersome or blocking would be to me.
But I think one of the things that we're up against the wall with timing, that we have 1 month. We have the application is submitted in March, and in April we have to vote on it and get it in because town meeting, the warrant closes. And so we have no negotiating. And so if you say the town staff has a month after we've looked at it for them to review it, for them to get comments back, while they're trying to get ready for town meeting, you're pushing a lot of people that our projects may not be as important. They may have things that are much more important than what we're trying to do. So then we've completely shut them out, and it may be something that they really needed to have some input.
Well, again, if I could just interrupt you for a second, Justin, I'm sorry, is that I go back and I say it again. If it's not broken, don't bother trying to fix it. Look at the diversity on our committee. Because we have a presentation to this committee, there's so many other committees that are represented, and we have seen in the past that someone can say, have you checked with this person or that person to see if there's other things that can be done? But if we start creating different levels and then it's just delaying everything, and people are going to lose interest. They're going to lose their fervor for bringing it forward. I go back and I say, what is it that's going on now that sucks? And I don't think it's something.
If I have $100,000 project and I have to go have the town administrator look at it, and I've got to wait 5 minutes, I'm not going to throw up my arms and say, "Oh, I give up." I'm just not going to do it. I don't think this is that cumbersome.
I think the onus is on us to make the other committees and stuff aware, not the applicant. That's just my 2 cents.
Okay, the onus is on us. It is a shared responsibility, and that is my failure. Everybody on this committee has to pick up and work harder.
Yeah. My one comment, John, that I think may not have been coming across right from me is that I don't think projects have to be literally in front of us as a committee before they get talked to the town employees, town administrator. I think that is perfectly fine for it to be done ahead of time. I'm just trying to think of ways that it can be not a hard requirement on the applicant to do so. Whether when it comes before us, we could go, oh well, if we didn't see anything or hear anything that said they did, have we heard, have you talked to them? Maybe there's this idea that can save you, $10,000, that kind of thing. But I don't.
We do
Go ahead,
that.
Roberta.
Yeah,
We already
It
do
can
Roberta.
be
it.
so we could, there can be required information, and then there can be instructions with recommendations. And you can include in your evaluation criteria, did they follow your recommendations? That gives you flexibility to say, it wasn't relevant here, it doesn't matter. Or, you can ask them to go back and ask for more information if you think it's necessary. But I can try to take all of the input that you've given me right now and create a set of instructions that have recommendations that you encourage your applicants to do, and then a simplified process that you require of them to be able to get in your pipeline, and to try to weave this communication with other boards and committees and staff into that as appropriate. That's all I can say. And I understand that you have other things on your agenda. I don't want to take up, I've already taken up most of your meeting time, but I'd like to let you move on. I have what I need from this tonight, so I welcome any further comments if anybody feels that there's something else that you want me to hear. But otherwise, I'm ready to take this and go to the wood shop with it.
Okay. Anybody else have anything else they'd like to add? And if you think of something, I'm sure Roberta, you have her email. You can shoot her an email and she'll be happy to incorporate. This is not a done deal. We're still working on this. So
yeah.
The sausage is not done yet, Jeff.
And I totally appreciate if it's not broken, don't fix it. I want to make sure that I understand what the pieces are before I try to document it. And if you're happy with it, good. If you see room for tweaking it, I want to be sensitive either way to what you're looking for, but I want to make sure that I'm asking the questions that I need to ask in order to know what you want out of it in the end.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Whoops.
Thank you.
Thank you, Roberta.
Did somebody say something? Nope. Okay, thanks, Roberta.
Well, I think, the other part of this, John, is that if this was really that bad, we'd have heard from Brooke Padgett a long time ago.
I don't know.
You gotta know when to be quiet sometimes, Jim.
I think we've been.
Good luck teaching him that.
He's not hardly said anything. She's
Hey,
watching a
Kate.
baseball game.
Ken, you're set up to screen share if you want to share the treasurer's report.
Oh,
Or I can
pressure's
do it.
on, Ken.
Do you want me to put it up? I can.
I've got it here.
Did I wake you up?
Let me see. Screen share.
All depends on your definition of awake.
There it is. Let me make sure I got the right screen. Okay, got it?
There it is.
You see it?
Yep.
So there aren't many differences between this one and the last one you saw. The data's different.
Shouldn't there be lots of differences?
Yeah, well,
We're not spending $1 million.
well, the $1 million wasn't entirely on here. You can see here on the super park in that we're not doing it. And so that took $250,000 off the revenue, the surcharge revenue. So the remaining amount went up by $250,000. And the bond doesn't show up on this. So everything else is the same. Everything else was approved, right? I'm sorry, I missed the meeting too. And so everything was done. So that leaves us with $250,000 more than we had expected to have. So we have the 567,000. So that's plenty. And so again, once again, we did not have to choose among qualified grant requests to approve any of them. Even the super park we managed to do and still have a reserve. So that's it.
Okay.
That the 23% match that you had there, Ken, is that still estimated?
Oh, right. So I could speak to that. Before we got any guidance whatsoever from the CPA Coalition and the government, Anita, the town accountant, and I just decided we would use, having no other considerations, exactly the same number we had from last year. So that's why it's so precisely inaccurate, 23.9%. That's just what we did last year. And so we wrote up the warrants based on that. And then at the last minute after warrants were even closed, the coalition came out with a lower estimate, which, based on their, the reasons that they enunciate, it's purposely going lower than, what is most likely to happen. So we decided not to change anything, but I did note it in this area right here. And so if we get a only 11.2% match, we'll have $59,000 less than the 400,000 that's listed there. But again, that's not going to make any difference. If it happens, we'll adjust it. If it doesn't, well, the only thing that's guaranteed is that the actual state match will be different than both of those numbers. So when it does come out, we'll adjust it, and we won't have any danger of overcommitting because the account has $401,000 in it. So that's that story.
Thanks, Ken.
Any other questions, comments?
I move that we accept the treasurer's report.
I have a
Second.
motion
Second.
and a second. Any further comment? Hearing none. All those in favor, starting with Sandy.
Yes.
Justin.
Aye.
John, aye. Paul.
Aye.
Brooke.
Aye.
Ken.
Aye.
Kristen.
Yes.
Okay, it unanimously approved. Clerk's report.
There are no minutes written. I apologize.
Nope,
Busy
no
month.
problem. No
You'll
problem.
have them next month.
Do we want to go over project updates? It's almost 9 o'clock. Are there any? I can give you one, or Joanne can. The Weights and Measures cabinet have been moved back to the municipal center, correct?
Yes.
That's one
Yep.
project
Exciting.
put to bed. The
So I can't wait to see the photographs. I was saying I can't wait to see the photographs.
Yes.
They're going
Let's
to
get
get.
some.
I bet Dawn did that. I mean, I don't, because I wasn't there when they moved it in, but I'm sure Dawn took good pictures.
I'd
Paul,
go look at it myself if I could, but this I
we're
can't.
kind of locked out. Paul, do you have an update on the common?
So we're still not somewhat, we are in a holding pattern. We are waiting for the plans. The subcontractor that had been holding it up, the electrical subcontractor, has submitted that information. The engineer has acknowledged that. He said that we would have it this past week, and we didn't get it. So we're still following up. It's been glacial, the progress that we have had on getting our engineering plans done. My anticipation is we will get them wrapped up this summer. So we will still be in good shape for meeting and pulling together our RFP in the fall, and then following our plan to go out to bid early following the holidays. So early January would be the time frame. One of the things that we do need to move forward on is getting a initial review from the arborists. It'll be a plan showing where the balls are, and it will help guide us with our construction. We definitely want to get that done in advance, but that's all contingent upon these engineering plans. They need that before they can do that work. So once we have those plans, things will start to move forward again in a pretty prompt fashion, because we'll have control over it. Unfortunately, with the engineering firm, we're beholden on them to get that information to us.
Okay, very quickly, the Institute Woods feasibility study, they're almost finished. There's one last piece that they're working on. That was one of the warrants that we did extend the sunset, so there will be no issue with that running over into July. The historical resources inventory continues. That's actually working really well. That project should be finished early July as well, and that's within. We still have a whole another year for that. Once that happens, the reimbursement from the state will come, and then that will go back to CPC. So that's another 15,000, I believe. Anybody else have any other project updates that they'd like to share?
The open space and rec plan is almost done. Sorry.
Okay.
I have a question for Paul.
Yes,
When
sir.
you get the harbor plan, can you send a copy around? I'm interested in what they're planning to do.
Certainly, I'll bring it to the CPC.
Thanks.
And
That's something they can put on the website, I would think.
Sure, that'd be
We
good.
probably have nothing on our
Marketing, right? Marketing.
Yeah.
Yeah, there we go. Yep.
website. Okay.
and just my only thing to say, I don't have anything on Cisco, but on open space and rec, the planning board did vote in favor of the plan at this past meeting. So I know it's not complete yet, but we did endorse it as a planning board. And I do want to also call attention to, we seem to skip item 5 on the agenda, the town meeting recap.
So
Oh,
say that
because
again?
I probably
So,
printed
John-
out the wrong.
I amended it today
Or-
because you
yeah.
had mentioned that you wanted to do a town meeting recap, but we kind of did it in Roberta's.
Yeah. Yes, I think we did.
So, I mean, but everybody knows Super Park failed. Unfortunately, hopefully we will be able to address this at another time because, as I said at town meeting, we've supported this from day one. I think we still support it in the future, and we'll just have to see where this leads us.
You know, if I could just interject at that point, there is that let's point out that our other articles were passed, and not to get discouraged. I think that the work that we've done this year has been yeoman work, and I think it's paid off in a lot of areas. And don't lose heart. This was a tough situation, but don't lose heart. I think that the other articles, we're still paying our bills, and we're still making each other laugh, and I think that's very important. And here's my cat.
Okay.
Aw.
On the town meeting recap, John, I would just like to say that, like, I think one of the things that was detrimental to us, especially for Super Park this time around, is, you know, a combination of a few factors. You know, number one, it was outside really hot day. People didn't want to spend the time discussing, so the question got moved for a bunch of these different articles relating to it, so which cut off any chance for people to make the comments or rebuttals to things that were said. I think that was one detriment there. Now, the other thing in my outside town meeting discussions about Super Park in particular is that people seem to, at least to me, have a much stronger favor for being, looking at this come the fall when we were at least a little bit further, along, knowing how bad the budget was with regards to the library, knowing how, the override would go for their own, finances in town, and as well in favor of like improving the existing parks, at least to an extent, before we would tackle the Super Park. That was what was communicated to me in later conversations. So I do think, and people at the same time had repeatedly told me that if we use that initial 241 to do the plumbing and conduit that we would have needed under the library parking lot to avoid having to tear that up later on because of the timeline for the library, many people would have been in favor of doing that so that we had the opportunity to put in, the park and the play area and even a splash pad in the future without having to, dig into the library parking lot. But that was, I didn't have an opportunity to say, anything at town meeting either for some of the stuff that was wrong or in my, opinion on benefit. But you all know that I voted against pushing it forward when we did. But the bottom line is, this could have been better had it not been hot in my mind.
I think it's still needed, even though they didn't vote in favor of it, we still need a park for everybody of every ability. So I still plan to be vocal about that.
Attaboy, John.
Anything else? Jim, you're not chomping at the bit.
No, I'm not, but I agree. I agree with what you said.
No,
And I think, but what I'm concerned about is that we just don't be discouraged. Don't be discouraged. We've done a lot of very, very good work lately. All right. And don't let this get you down. All right. Let's dig in and let's continue to march.
Not just lately.
No, I think
Forever.
CPC, we've been very fortunate that we've had good projects that
Except for the
CPC
dog park.
the poor old dog park.
Which was all yours.
It would have dragged on so much longer, but when she was talking about the application process, Joanne can tell you that when we were first putting together our application and we were taking different parts of what seemed to be working, that you talk about copy and paste. I can remember physically cutting out different questions and then scotch taping them together on a page and photocopying that, and that's what we were putting out as the applications for CPC.
So now, it's because this is a public meeting, I also want people to know Grafton was one of the very first towns to, I don't like.
Shoestring budget. Well, we have
bent the wheel ourselves.
Can I ask a quick question? This is
Yeah.
Kristen.
No, I'm sorry, we're out of time.
Does anybody know of, now that the super park is not passed, the land behind the library that it was going to be built on? Are there other ideas or proposals for what that land is going to be used for now?
I've heard nothing. I think that's the purpose for that land, to have some community. That's why the Peralt property was purchased, and I think that's all Peralt, isn't it, Brooke?
Yeah.
Yes.
It's not that
Yes,
some
it
of it
is.
was town already.
Yes, I think that's all Peralt. But I mean, Peralt was also purchased because you're having the extension of the library.
Right.
It was
But
a
I think it's
twofer.
to benefit the town in the best way possible. So.
And I will say to the extent that I was talking to people that happened to be not in favor of the super park as it was, not a person that I spoke to had a alternate proposal for the land other than leaving it untouched. And I'm not sure that's the best use of the land either. That's just my own conversations, but figured I'd answer the question as it was.
Thank you. Is it zoned? Is it able to accommodate some affordable housing?
I can look into that in 2 seconds. Give me a moment.
Well, Brooke, Brooke
There was talk about that for a long time, and Peralt had a proposal to do, I don't know if it's affordable, it was over 65 housing, I think. I also think his proposal was probably a little overblown because of the wetlands back there. So I don't know exactly, it probably is, well, Justin can tell you if it's zoned for it, but there was a proposal and it goes all the way down South Street. But as I said, there's a lot of wetlands back there and you have to cross a few things. So I don't think it's as easy as Peralt made it out to be, and other people may think it is.
I think any plan will have to be fairly limited, and that's because of the library, that the
Well, now
super
you don't have
park
an
was going to
entrance
use
exit,
the access through the parking lot to their own parking lot. But if it's
Yeah.
made into a road to go to more apartments or houses or whatever, Mass Library Board will not, we're very careful. That will not fly. So.
Well, there's also an issue, it's coming back to me now when Peralt was proposing it, that it was the amount of traffic that was coming out of there, and it was X number of feet from a corner and a railroad track. And I don't think it's as easy to put, affordable housing or a town building or something else back there. I think that's why a couple of reasons why they settle on a park, right? Because you could benefit from the one parking lot, and you didn't have to jump through some of those hoops that you would if you had to put in affordable housing or something else, a municipal building of some kind.
Yeah, I'll say I think it's currently zoned as R40 for residential. So the higher I think R40 is lowered, the higher density. I forget for sure, but either way, we do have bylaws on the length of dead end streets. We have things that make that just difficult in terms of what is available to build in terms of just plain old subdivision rules and zoning guidelines. And then we have the added complication of the wetlands as well. So that would be a hard parcel as it exists right now to build something on, for housing and that. Like, I can't imagine a easy way looking at the zoning and the map to get a road, to connect from the back to make it not a dead end road. And I don't imagine the railroad is going to give another access easement to have another crossing. So
that's not good.
It would probably be a difficult project to have something like any sort of residential development in there.
How about a dog park?
The Jim Gallagher Dog Park. We're working on it.
There it is.
I think you need a cat park, Jim. You don't have a dog, you have a cat.
Anything else?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor?
You.
We are adjourned. Thank you very much.
Sandy wants out of here.